Hey there guys, welcome to the part 2 for Unit 8, your mid-unit test review. So part 1, which is pages 1, numbers 1 through 3, have been completed in a different video, so watch that video first, but this is part 2, so we're going to do problems 5 through the rest of your review. So starting with problems 5 and 6, this is a transformation question, so they tell you we have our parent function of f of x equals x squared, and we're supposed to write the new transformation function. So that, once again, is always where we can pick any letter. Usually I like to choose h, but let's say h of x equals, I like to leave space in front of my f of x just in case I have some sort of reflection or a vertical compression or stretch. I like to leave a space in front of my x in case I have a horizontal vertical compression or stretch, and then a space after my x in case I have shifts left to right or up and down. So once I have this, I start reading my problem. It is telling me that I am translating 3 units to the left. Well, if I'm going 3 units to the left, I know when I move left or right, I have a horizontal transformation. Horizontal transformations happen inside the parentheses, but remember, when you're inside the parentheses, you do the opposite. So left would usually make you think, oh, I'm going to go to the subtraction, because left means negative. But it's opposite. So if we're going left 3, we're actually going right 3. So be very, very careful. This is where students will make the most common errors. Don't forget, inside the parentheses is opposite or inside is inverse. Then you are going 1 unit up. Well, we know when we go up and down, we have a vertical transformation. So we are going to go up or down. Now, outside stays the same. So if you're outside the parentheses, positive is positive. So 1 unit up. We write, as you would think, plus 1. Now, don't forget, somewhere in your packet, you should have filled out your 8.3 notes. So you should have this chart, if it focuses, filled out somewhere and more or less memorized, at least for the patterns. Inside the parentheses, you're horizontal. Outside the parentheses, you're vertical. Inside is opposite. Outside is the same. So have this more or less memorized, so make sure you have that studied before your test. Now, there's 2 ways to write your transformation functions. You can write it like this. You can also use it with the x squared. The only difference if we're writing it with an x squared instead of the f of x. So this one is a transformation function using function notation. But if you want to write it in reference to quadratic equations, all you do is you get rid of the f. And instead of the f, you'll add the squared. So these are both transformation functions, and they both perfectly describe or represent what's being described to us above here. So either way you write it works. They're both correct. Similarly, for question 3, let's say this time I want to choose J. You can choose any letter. Note L, K, M, N. So I have J of x is equal to leave space in front. And kind of leave spaces just in case I have any vertical or horizontal transformations. Now this one tells me I am being vertically compressed by a factor of 1/2. Well, I know vertical transformations happen outside the parentheses. And you should know that vertical compressions or horizontal compressions or stretches will happen in front of everything. So they're not the ones that are being added or subtracted, they're the ones that are being multiplied. Now, usually it's opposite. In this case, since we have a vertical compression of 1/2, it's exactly what it sounds like. I will just write a 1/2 in front of my parentheses. But be careful, it is also being reflected across the x-axis. Now, if you think of a parent function when you're reflecting across the x-axis, so when you're going positive and negative, you're actually reflecting, you're going here, positive and negative. You would check your table, know your reflections. In this case, reflecting across the x-axis. So we have 2 types of reflections. We have reflections across the x-axis, which is a vertical transformation, and you have a reflection across the y-axis, which is a horizontal transformation. Usually you will see this one, however, reflection across the x-axis. So make sure you know it's a negative in the front. So we're going to take this negative and write it in the front. That's why I like to leave space in front of my f of x when I draw it, just in case I have a reflection or a compression or stretch. Then we're translated 5 units to the right. This time, since I'm not going up or down, and it's not specifically a vertical transformation, I know I am inside the parentheses. Left or right is horizontal transformations. So 5 units to the right will actually just be minus 5 because it's opposite. So instead of plus 5, it will be minus 5. And 4 units up, you have another vertical transformation going up or down. So a plus 4. So this was a lot of transformations. Make sure you know how to read a problem, take the descriptions, and write a function from it, either using function notation or using just quadratic notation. So whichever way you prefer to write it, they're both correct. Once again, either function notation with the f and x in parentheses or without the f and just a square. Number 7, it's asking about the quadratic parent function. If you remember, the parent function is kind of like your original quadratic function, where it starts at 0, 0, the origin. It's facing upwards. So we need to see which one's true. So the graph is symmetrical about the x-axis. So my x-axis is right here. So you have to ask yourself, is this graph symmetrical about the x-axis? Well, no. Because for it to be symmetrical across the x-axis, that means what's reflected on the upper bound should also be reflected on the lower bound, which is not true. So it's not A. What about symmetrical across the y-axis? Well, here's my y-axis, and this one is symmetrical because you can see it is perfectly reflected left and right of the y-axis. The domain is a set of all non-negative numbers. Well, incorrect, because you should remember that for quadratic functions or parabolas, as long as they're not word problems, your domain is always all real numbers, not just positive numbers. The range is a set of all real numbers, which is also incorrect. Range does not go forever downwards. It has a restricted. In fact, my range is 0 all the way positive, or a set of all non-negative numbers. So my range is all the positive numbers from 0 to infinity. So my answer choice is B. For number 8, similarly, you are talking about the parent function. In this case, we are being transformed. So here's my transformation function. Once again, using g of x, you could use g, h, j, doesn't really matter. This one's using quadratic notation, so instead of using the f, it's using this type of notation. Which of these describes this transformation? So we can notice we're inside the parentheses right here. So since we're inside the parentheses, we know we have a horizontal transformation, which means we're moving left or right. We know since we're adding, it's going to be opposite. So instead of moving right, we're actually moving left 9.5. So you have to look for the ones that say left 9.5. Well, there's only one that will say left 9.5. So you can see how important it is to more or less have that transformation memorized. So make sure you have it memorized before your incoming test day. Because you had to know that since it's horizontal, you're going left or right. Since it's plus, you're going left that many units. For question 9, a quadratic function t and s are graphed on the same coordinate grid. The vertex of graph t is 25 units above the graph of s. Which pair of functions can be used to create the graphs t and s? So you look at your problem. We know that the graph of t is 25 units above the vertex of graph of x. So we can kind of sketch this out. I know that my graph of t is 25 units above, and that can mean anything. It could mean this one starts at 0, this one can start here, but somehow we know that the distance between these is 25. So t is 25 units, at least for the vertex, above the graph of s. So if we look at this one tells us, hey, first off, if you're going up or down, so notice the difference between these graphs is that one is shifted upwards versus the other one because it's 25 units upwards, which means we have to have a vertical transformation, which means it can't be A, because this is a vertical stretch. This one does show us a vertical transformation, it just shows us up 25, but we have to make sure it goes to the right one. So let's see, T should be the one that's up 25, which is the one up 25, so maybe it's B. Part C showing us a vertical reflection. It says nothing about a reflection, so it's not C. And D is showing us, yes, a vertical transformation, but this one's going down 25, which is incorrect because you want graph T to be 25 units above from graph of X. So your answer choice is B. So for number 10, it gives you a graph and you have to describe the domain and range. So looking at this graph, my domain are all possible X values. So I look at my leftmost point my graph will go, and by graph I mean this line that's given. This one goes to here, -9, less than X. Now it will be less than or equal to if it is a closed circle. This one is an open circle, so please remember that if it is an open circle, it's strictly less than. If it is a filled-in circle or closed circle, it's less than or equal to. Since the -9 had an open circle, it's strictly less than X. Less than, look at the rightmost my graph will go, which is 2. My graph will go furthest on the X, remember domain is X values, 2. However, this one is a closed circle, so it's going to be less than or equal to. Range is a similar idea, except range is going to involve my Y values. So I want the lowest and highest Y. So on my Y line, the lowest this line will go is here, -6. Has a closed circle, so it needs to have a bar. The highest my line goes is 3. Has an open circle, no bar. So my range is, which is what it's saying, my Y values are between -6 and 3, which is true, that's where my X lies. Or my range lies, where my Y values lie. You'll do the similar thing for number 11. So for number 11, your domain, be careful. A lot of students will look at this and say their domain, their lowest X value is 400, which is false because X values are down here. So your lowest X value is actually 0. Less than or equal to X. And then we see, hey, now be careful. Don't say your highest X value is 8. This arrowhead is very important. This arrowhead means it goes on forever. So that's the symbol we use forever. It goes forever onwards to the right. Or it's all positive X values. Your range does not start at 0. Your range starts here. These are my Y values. So my range starts at 400. And your range also goes up infinitely upwards. Now slanted upwards, but it does go upwards. So you will also use infinity. So be careful to know there is a difference between endpoints that have a hard stopping point and arrowheads, which means they are going on infinitely. The last problem on your review is this one right here. Function t is in the form of t of x equals bx squared plus r if the values of b and r are both greater than 0. So make sure you know what this means. B and r are both greater than 0, which means they're telling us that b and r are positive. So this b here and this r is positive. That's important to know. Which graph could represent t? If you know that r is positive, then you know that you're having a shift towards up because it's positive. So this is shift up. So can't be A, can't be B. Notice it's shifting downwards. And remember, we're always comparing it to the parent function, which starts at 0, 0. So from 0, 0, this one shifted downwards. So it can't be B, because since it's positive, this one's shifting up. Also can't be D. There is no vertical shift from the origin. This one has a shift up, and this one has a shift up. Now, they don't specify the numbers, so we're not really looking at the numbers. We're just looking at the behavior. Now, since B also has to be positive, that means there is no reflection. Remember, if you have a negative number in front of your x squared, there's a reflection. So we need to have a positive parabola. So my parabola needs to go upwards, because B is positive. So it can't be A. My only answer choice possible is C. So make sure you know how to do these, how when given, this was a past star question by the way, how given a description of the behavior of a graph, not necessarily shift 6 or reflected by 5 or vertical compression by 1/2, make sure you know how to read a description and find the graph that best matches it. That is your review. If you have any questions, sign up for tutoring. Otherwise, have a nice day.